Well, hello there. Believe it or not, we've made it to week 10, and we're about to wrap up this course. I hope you have enjoyed it and learned a thing or two about leadership. I wanted to share with you some final comments and thoughts on issues that I think are important to consider and hopefully will help you consider your leadership challenges in the future, as well as maybe consideration of working in the nonprofit sector. So, I provided some articles. You may get to read them this week, maybe over the next few weeks after you get through the hectic schedule of graduating. But needless to say, the way organizations are structured have changed from bureaucratic to flat organizations, from complicated to minimal. You're going to be pretty much almost working virtually instead of in one place all your life. Systems have changed, and the culture, the way we look at decision making and being open and candid and more risk tolerant, that entrepreneurial approach I was trying to convey to you, are becoming more and more important. Um, from a nonprofit point of view, but I think this also applies to anyone working in the social and human service sectors. There is a certain amount of chaos and change going on in terms of how we deliver services. We're being challenged by a variety of factors, including whether or not we're showing results. Uh, as I've tried to indicate previously, it is very disappointing to me that at the end of my career, I am working in environments where there are more kids in child poverty than when I started my career. I'm not sure how that happened. Well, I do know how that happened, but it certainly is difficult to accept the fact um, that you've made a difference when that's the end result. Because one of the things we do in social work is take these things somewhat personally. So that's why my mobile fresh bus and other things, I try to do what I can within my universe, but that's what we're talking about in terms of the whole sector being challenged as to what difference are we making. And the Paul Light article talks about how organizations are going to adapt to that. One of the things that I think is important about what we do in social work as well as in nonprofits is that this is a very American thing to do, as I've tried to point out in the past, to try to help and lead people to better their lives, better their communities. That is as American as apple pie, and we need to never forget that. In order to do these kinds of things, we have to have corporate cultures which empower and emphasize team. These are some of the concepts I'd like you to remember from this class. Building from strength, being asset based, and diversifying to do that. Having many programs. That's why I have built a very diverse human service organization, because if I'm serving families, I have to serve the whole family in a continuum of services. The three C's: customer value, being community centered, being comprehensive, looking at developing a little more entrepreneurially and using innovation to drive how you're intersecting. That's going to be even more important for you in this new world where you are connected globally and all over the place. Remember that leadership is both about vision, but it's also about implementation. It's about saying, over there is where we want to go. I'm someone who can get you there, and there is a good place to be. That's what the leader has to ultimately bring to the table. Being financially smart, but also understanding that you're going to be accountable and being prepared to be accountable. And finally, being both effective and efficient in what you're doing. These are my top 10 challenges or kind of directives that I give to my people about trying to equip themselves as human service leaders of the future. Be concerned about the environment. Just don't look inside, look outside the four walls, and that's much of what we did when we talked about being strategic and looking at the customer. Having active, knowledgeable, whether it's a board or people around you that can inform you, kind of like your own focus group. Being community based and driven, understanding who the customer is, what they want and need, not what you want to give them. I learned this early on, actually, when I was in social work school. Meet the client where they are at and give them what they need when they need it, not give them what you want to give them when you want to give it. Simple concepts always work. Develop programs and approaches that are flexible and holistic, positioned for the long term. Use your local resources, your volunteers, your people, your whatever you can find to help make things better. Be a broker. You don't always have to do things yourself. Collaborate, coordinate, innovate, and take risks. But risks built on strengths. Create model services. Don't just do things to be average, to be status quo. That's not why you invested all this time and money in getting this degree. You want to be the person who develops that solution of the problem of child poverty. You want to be better, greater, different, excellent. Stay close to volunteers, whether it's in the nonprofit sector or the social service sector, and always be vision oriented but also budget based. So, one of the concepts I came across when I was about 20 years post my master's in social work, and I felt like I was just putting band aids on a problem, was I looked and thought about, I had been trained in those days very much in the medical model. You diagnosed the problem, you prescribed the treatment plan, and you implemented it. The client had some say, but it was more or less like the way medicine was, right? Back for many, many years, is you were the expert, you prescribe what the patient want. Well, then about in the mid 90s, John McKnight at Northwestern University started to float this idea of being asset-based. Stop focusing on the deficits of people. Because that diagnostic model, although, listen, it's very much needed, especially when you're dealing with mental illness and some other issues. And I actually started my career as a psychiatric social worker, so I understand the benefits of that model. But when you're trying to make big differences, you got to look at the assets and the strengths of people. And even with clients who are severely mentally ill, I mean, you have to hook into what you can work with, right? So he says, look at the glass as being half full, not half empty, and look at what capacities and gifts your clients are bringing to the table. And so, in other words, rather than looking at a community as being a depressed area with everybody on welfare and all kinds of problems, you know that 95% of the people are functioning very well, have families, have churches, have friends, have ways in which they live their lives. And that's what you want to tap into and build on. I don't have time to go into a lot of examples, but I have worked in a lot of communities where we've gone in, and that was what the community was known as, and we turned that around by inviting people in and bringing their gifts. Elizabeth Shore also looked at this in her book, and I provide you a couple of chapters, and she looked at the 7 attributes of highly successful programs. And it's about some of these concepts: being comprehensive, being flexible, looking at the whole client. And then she boils it down to it's going to need a new practice and a new practitioner. What's that going to be based on? Asset strength based approaches, collaboration with clients and resources, much like we have learned to turn the treatment planning process around, right? And engage the client to empower them to take responsibility for it. Reconceiving the professional role, that we're not there to tell people what to do, we're there to facilitate them making it happen. And finally, a spiritual dimension that transcends the material need. Now, that's not necessarily religious, although it doesn't hurt to be religious. That's about being spiritual, being able to bring a passion, another level to the relationship, being both wizard and saint, making things happen, but being driven by a higher cause. And the fact that you're in social work and willing to improve society and have sacrificed your time and effort and money to get there, I think it says that you fit this bill. Not just be a little bit of a devil and bring some wizardry to it, and you'll see the kinds of differences you can make. And then Peter Drucker, who in his book, Post-Capitalist Society, kind of also talked about, he was talking about the nonprofit sector, but I think he's also talking about what those of us in social work do. Patriotism is the willingness to die for one's country. Citizenship is the willingness to contribute to one's country. Citizenship means responsibility, means making a difference in one's community, in one's society, in one's country. So he talks about that these nonprofits are going to be the center of meaningful citizenship, that the mega states government has not worked to provide what people need. And so whether you look at the Tea Party, the Occupy movement, Feeling the Burn, or the Trumpsters, you know, these are evidence, I believe, of people searching for an answer. We may not always agree with it, but they're recognizing that they need a glue that binds them together and get needs met, because government alone cannot do it. And Drucker says that ultimately it's going to be the local nonprofits, organizations of the social sector, run by social service leaders, hopefully, that release the spiritual energies of people and provide the social services that the society needs and the leadership development that the polity needs. So I hope this class has been helpful to you to maybe think about what your leadership path may be. But if not, I have hopefully some inspiring last quotes for you to consider. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. John Quincy Adams. And finally, someone who you all should be very aware of, Jane Addams. The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life. So go out and lead. Have a wonderful career. I wish you well for those of you that are graduating, and I hope this course has been helpful in maybe opening your eyes up to a couple of other ways that you can develop and apply your learning at this point. If you ever need my assistance or help, you know how to reach me. You should know. Feel free to do so. And once again, good luck on your future, and hope to see you along the road.